Underway. So I'd like to welcome everyone to the webinar, in particular our special guest, Hayley Wallace, this evening. So Hayley Wallace is a naturopath, acupuncturist and nutritionist, herbalist, iridologist, aromatherapist, and as well a personal trainer. She holds a number of other qualifications as well. She conducts general health education, positive mindset seminars around Australia and New Zealand, offering quality information to the public. As a previous lecturer at the Australian Institute of Applied Sciences, Hayley has a vast knowledge in holistic health practices and is currently upgrading her studies to a PhD level. And I know you've just recently finished a tour in Queensland, so you're one very active lady and a mother of 2 children as well. So in the past few years, Hayley wrote her first book, Finding Wellness, to continue her goal of educating the public on sound health practices, and completed and released her second book, Infant Health. As a mother and grandmother herself, she hopes to reach many families in need and to provide them with the education necessary to make the changes towards ensuring good health and happiness for themselves and their children. Hayley currently sponsors 2 children in Cambodia, and a percentage of her book sales go directly to charities which help children locally and overseas. So without any further ado, I'd love to introduce you to our webinar this evening. Hayley, you're going to be talking on stress, exhaustion and adrenal deficiency. I know you talk about many topics, and we felt this one is particularly valid to a lot of people out there in the world today, and we'd love to hear your insights. So happy for you to take it away, Hayley.
Terrific. Thanks, Renee. Okay, so yes, as Renee just said, so much stress, exhaustion, and therefore leading to adrenal deficiency. So we're going to explain those different terms tonight. But it is a huge challenge for a lot of people in the Western world today, because many of us are playing parental roles. We're also out in the workforce. We've got, like we say, some adult children now, bringing grandkids to us, etc. We can be running around playing taxi all the time. So there's a lot of different things happening in a lot of people's lives. And so this is why we did feel this was really relevant to today, and how we can basically manage all of those things without them getting on top of us. So let's get straight into some nitty-gritty. First of all, what is this stress response all about? Because first I like to give an understanding of the challenge so that we can then look at how we can address the challenge. So the stress response is a normal response, and it's designed to raise your levels of hormones that help give you that fight or flight reaction. So you can imagine back in the caveman days that if there was a lion running at you, then all of a sudden you need that huge burst of energy to get out of there really fast, and that was that flight response. If you weren't going to be able to get out of there really fast, you need to be able to turn around and fight for your life. So these hormones have been around ever since ever, basically, and so they've been able to provide us with that instant reaction when necessary. We still have that same response available to us today, although not many of us are being chased by tigers, thank goodness. The stresses that we do have are a little bit different, and so we're going to get into those challenges fairly soon. But what happens in that instance is your cortisol and your adrenaline raises. Now, when the stress is over, when you've managed to run away from the tiger or these sorts of things, then the hormones should slowly return, or I say slowly, within an hour or so, return back to normal levels and have no more effect on the body. That's what the body was designed to do. That's what it was designed to cope with. And so we'll talk a little bit about what cortisol is and what adrenaline is, because clearly, as you can see, we do need these in our system. So first of all, cortisol, what does it do? Well, it prepares our immune system for any threat, and it prepares our brain for quick thinking. These are the 2 key areas. Now, it's interesting because when we think of our immune system, if you're getting chased by a tiger, you probably don't really need to have a super great immune system happening right there and then. But in some ways it prepares it for a potential onslaught of the stress, and in other areas it kind of shuts it down, or I guess bypasses certain areas because there's certain things that don't need to happen during that intensity of the stress response. So basically it prepares it by arcing up some of the systems and winding down some of the systems for that period of time. Our brain also needs to get into quick thinking mode. So again, if the tiger's chasing you, you need to quickly decide, which am I going to do, stand here and fight, or am I going to run? If I'm going to run, where am I going to go? Am I going to climb this tree, etc.? Your brain needs to be working fast, fast, fast the whole time for you to be successful. So again, your body selects parts of the body which are really important during that critical time, and it basically unselects, so to speak, other systems that are not necessarily needed. So for example, you also get a rise in your blood sugar. So stored energy in your body actually gets changed into sugars or broken down quickly into available sugar and dumped into the bloodstream so that you have readily available energy to burn. This is sometimes why when people have a coffee or something like that, they get a little bit of a cortisol kick or an adrenaline kick from the coffee, and that also dumps sugar into their bloodstream as well. So it's basically like a double blast. Now, the other thing that happens is the digestive system and the reproductive system and all of the body processes that you have available for your normal growth and repair, these all actually get suppressed. Not shut down completely, obviously, but down-regulated is what we call it. There is no need to have a super effective digestive system when you're running away from a tiger. That is of no importance whatsoever. Obviously, your reproductive system does not need to be functioning at a high level when you're running away from a tiger, and your body does not need to grow and repair during that time. So you can see why the body's very selective. It gives us the energy, the thinking, etc., and it shuts down the parts that are not necessary. Incredibly clever. Adrenaline, this is similar but slightly different. So what adrenaline is designed to do is that it elevates your heart rate, so it can get that blood pumping through the body very fast. It also increases your blood pressure along with the heart rate going up, and as we talked about, gets your sugar levels ready for that fast burst of energy. So you know, you're ready to literally, you know, sprint as fast as you can, as quickly as you can. And we all tend to talk about adrenaline quite a lot. I think most of us know what an adrenaline rush is. And if you go bungee jumping or, you know, one of these more extreme sports, it's that kind of rush that we get, and that's what we basically term as adrenaline. So what's the challenge today? Well, really what's happening is we tend to get stressed from a more long-term perspective. So instead of running away from the tiger or turning around and fighting for our life, we tend to get stressed and we do silly things like reach for a cigarette to calm your nerves, get that chocolate bar for your quick energy fix, etc., or, you know, even a beer, some sort of alcohol, these sorts of things. And these are common responses when we look at the general population today. So where's the stress coming from? Well, obviously work for a lot of people. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people stuck in jobs that they don't like, they don't particularly enjoy. Getting to and from work, quite often stuck in traffic, etc. When you're at work, there's deadlines. There's other people to deal with. You may or may not like them, but there may be emotional issues that go on in the workplace, etc. These are the sort of stresses that can go on, as I say here, for hours, days, weeks, for some people literally years. No sooner do you get out of the traffic, you get into that work environment, you've got those deadlines, you get back into the traffic, you get home and you've got to quickly get dinner sorted, you've got, you know, probably got a family to attend to, etc. So where in the average person's day does the stress actually cease? And that's modern living for most people, unfortunately. So hopefully not you who are listening tonight. Hopefully you're in the other category where you've got that all sorted, but for those of you who haven't, we've got some solutions tonight. So it is a good idea. I just want to go back to that top statement there. When we become stressed, instead of going running or going and slogging out at the gym, etc., we tend to go for these other negative behaviors instead. So if you feel like, oh, I'm really stressed, you know, I've got all this adrenaline pumping, but you've got a short amount of time, then maybe doing a quick workout or going for a run or going and, you know, punching a pillow or just expending that energy somehow, because that is what nature intended us to do, was to expend that energy so it's done, and now your system can start to get back to normal because it recognizes that the stress is over. Now, technically in your mind it may not be over, but at least from that physical perspective, you've given your body some relief or and allowed it to now release that kind of stress. So if your body is going through this high stress, constantly at this high level, etc., instead of protecting you, which is what it was designed to do, as we've talked about, it can eventually make you more vulnerable to long-term health problems, which can be life-threatening, things like cardiovascular disease, obviously problems like heart attacks, etc. So whilst the fight and flight was designed to save your life, unfortunately for most people now, it is fast-tracking them towards death. So what does prolonged high cortisol do? Well, first of all, it does actually contribute to the obesity epidemic we've got happening today. When your cortisol levels are high, there's two key things that are happening in your body. First of all, it is causing your muscle tissue to break down. So you've got this fast metabolism happening for a short period of time, or in the case of chronic stress, for a long period of time. So your muscle tissue is breaking down, but the cortisol also encourages you to store body fat, because it basically says, look, you know, we're under stress for a long period of time. We need some extra reserves to help me cope and to make sure I don't burn up all of my muscle and all of the reserves that I have. So it changes the way the body metabolizes fats, carbs, etc., and encourages your body to actually hold on to fat stores and accumulate and transport, basically change sugar into body fat. So the obesity epidemic we're seeing, especially with people who have the apple shape, where they might be slim or thin in other areas of their body like arms and legs, but they're carrying all the weight around the middle of their body. These are the people we call the apple shapes, and they are at a much higher risk of heart disease, diabetes, stroke, etc., than the people who tend to carry the weight around hips, thighs, backside, etc. So the reason that they're at this higher risk of heart disease is predominantly because of this high cortisol that is constantly flowing around in their body. So, and basically making the body realize that it is stressed the whole time. Other problems that can come from high cortisol, insomnia is obviously a key challenge, not only because when you're sleeping, your cells, your body's supposed to be repairing. This is when you're supposed to be completely rested. Your immune system repairs itself. Generally between about 10 and midnight is the key time for your immune system to repair, so ideally we should be asleep at that time. But you can imagine, and for all of us, I know we've all experienced it at some point in our life when we've got a massively stressful situation happening and we can't stop thinking about it, and you've got that adrenaline feeling running through your body. It's next to impossible to sleep. And some people experience this regularly. Some people might just say, yes, I've had that happen once or twice in my life before. So you can see how easily insomnia becomes a real challenge to people with this high cortisol happening all the time. And of course, if you're long-term insomniac, that also raises your risk factors for other health problems as well. Digestive challenges. Now, we talked before about when your cortisol and your adrenaline's high, your digestive system is suppressed because it is not a key priority in your body during the time of the so-called fight and flight. So if your digestive system is being suppressed most of the time because you're stressed most of the time, then we are not going to get the nutrients that we should be getting from our food. We're not going to get the balance of the good gut bacteria. We're probably not going to be eliminating effectively. There's a whole range of problems that can come from digestive disturbance. So again, that becomes a long-term problem in and of itself. Heart disease, we talked about that, and again, you can imagine when you're under stress, just think again for yourself back to when you've been under high stress for periods of time before, your heart's beating fast, your blood pressure's a little bit up. That is not supposed to be happening constantly. So if it is, and your heart's working that hard 24/7 or at least for a good 16 hours of the day, this can just simply shorten your lifespan. There's a theory, and we can't necessarily say it's 100% true, but there's a theory that you have a certain amount of heartbeats available in your lifetime for you. And so if your resting heart rate is nice and relaxed, then your life is likely to be longer because you're using up those heartbeats. I know it's a simplistic terminology, but you're not using up those heartbeats quickly. So whilst it, like I say, it does sound quite simplistic, there's a lot of good research behind that theory. And if that is true, then stress can become our absolute worst enemy from a heart perspective because we're using up our heartbeats at a very, very rapid rate. Depression is likely to become a long-term issue for people who are under high stress, high cortisol, high adrenaline the whole time. Obviously, if you're not sleeping, that alone can become quite depressing if it goes on for a long period of time. So, and also because depression is linked to liver challenges, and liver, of course, is part of the digestive system. So when that's being suppressed, as we already talked about, the liver's being suppressed and its function as well. The liver detox pathways are being suppressed, and depression can become a key part and parcel of that whole picture there. Poor memory, again, because of the links between insomnia particularly. If you are not sleeping and you're under stress the whole time, most people say, I just simply cannot think straight, and your memory literally does start to shut down over a period of time. You can imagine in the fight and flight incidents, running away from that tiger, good memory recall is not key priority to your body. Short term, yes, where's the nearest tree I can hide behind, but long-term memories really are of no importance to you. So that's another key area of the body where we become selective in what actually gets blood flow and stimulation during that time. So obviously long-term physical illness, lots and lots and lots of different health challenges can come from this high cortisol, as I think has become apparent just from that short spiel. Now, when someone has been under high level of constant stress, the adrenals, and these are two little, what would you call it? They're basically, they're almost in the shape of like a little walnut or a little liver, if you can imagine the shape of a liver sitting on top of the kidneys. And when we talk in Chinese medicine or, you know, acupuncture type theory, the kidneys and adrenals are basically termed as exactly the same thing. And it's very interesting in Chinese theory because they basically say once that kidney energy is gone, that is when the body dies. So in Western terms, we don't talk about kidney energy, we talk about adrenals. But when you match the Western way of you know, dealing with this issue and the Eastern way, they actually match perfectly. So whether it's adrenals or kidney energy we're talking about, at the end of the day, we want them to be operating at the highest possible level. So adrenals, this is where your cortisol is being manufactured or released, and it's where the adrenaline is being manufactured and released as well. So basically you can imagine these as little pump houses to pump out the hormones, etc. Now the pump house basically will only last so long. If you imagine it like a bit of machinery, eventually it's going to wear out, wear down, you know, parts literally burn out. And so if you can picture it in that sort of terminology, if you're under high stress too often and too long, then literally those body parts burn out in a sense. And this is where the word exhaustion starts to kick in. For people who have ever been to see a naturopath or someone, or an iridologist, someone who's skilled in the science of being able to look at different markings in the eyes, this burnout exhaustion, it can be clearly visible in your eyes. So someone who's got the skills in iridology can point that out to you. So let's look at this, what we call the general adaptation syndrome, or GAS for short. Now, Hans Selye was actually the fellow who created this model, and it was basically just to give us a picture of exactly what's going on in the body and how we can start to understand this. So when we're under stress, the first stage we go through is alarm. Now, when we talk about that whole fight and flight response, literally running away from the tiger or fighting the tiger, then this is what happens, the increase in cortisol, the adrenaline, everything that we talked about right at the beginning of tonight's talk. If that goes for a long period of time, so let's say, you ran away from the tiger, but he's not leaving you alone, and this is going on and on, and you're still kind of stuck up the tree, but you need to get down, you need to run again, and this becomes a bit of a long-term challenge. And I know I'm kind of making that sound like a bit of a funny story, but you can imagine the challenge is not just a half an hour, it is ongoing for now quite a number of hours. When that happens on a daily basis, we eventually get into what we call the resistance stage. So your hormones have been too high for too long, and literally those adrenals, the hormones that are being produced, etc., literally that's starting to deplete. You're not exhausted yet, but you have been running on adrenaline for too long, and signs are starting to show. So even in the resistance stage, you may be not sleeping very well. You might be starting to put body fat around the central part of the body. You might be starting to feel a little bit down from a mood perspective, but it'll be early stages. And so if that is ringing bells to anyone, you could possibly be in that resistance stage. So alarm bells should literally be ringing, and this is why this talk's for you guys tonight. So stage 3, once this has been going on for a very long time, now for some of you this could be extremely high level stress for a period of only a month, 2 maybe. For some people it is a reasonably high level of stress that has been going on for 6 months, a year, even 2 or 3 years. Sometimes when I say to people, when was the last time you felt truly, truly relaxed? There was nothing playing on your mind. You absolutely just feel 100% relaxed. It's quite amazing how many people say, you know what, I'm not sure that I can actually remember that long ago. Because in our modern world, we constantly always have something going on, something that needs to be done, something else that needs to be ticked off the list. So exhaustion, this is when we are literally tired all the time. Now, it's an interesting one here because people will handle exhaustion differently. Some people just keep going. They just keep going. They're just that way by nature. And even when they're completely exhausted, they will just keep going, and they will just sort of say, no, I feel fine, I don't think I'm stressed at all, but people around them will be looking at them thinking, are you kidding? We can tell you're absolutely exhausted. Other people will fall into the exhaustion stage and literally stay in bed. I cannot get out of bed. I'm literally wiped, chronic fatigue type stuff going on there. So there will be 2 ways that this manifests, and it just really depends on your nature as to how that is seen outwardly. But here's a few signs that you could be heading to or in the exhaustion phase. First of all, if you're the sort of person who, let's say you're going into a talk or a lecture, you've gone into a seminar or something like that, or even sitting down to have a listen to the talk tonight, and 10 minutes into it, you're feeling your eyes are starting to drop, you're really feeling like, gee, I could just nod off now, but I'm trying to hang in there so I get this information. If that's how you're feeling right now, then you are likely to be in stage 3. So falling asleep within a short period of time or feeling like you could, that's a clear sign of exhaustion. And believe it or not being able to sleep. So once again, the insomnia. Some people who are completely exhausted, they get in bed and they can't sleep because they are overtired. Their body has not had that whole pattern of awake and asleep and awake and asleep in normal processes, the normal release of melatonin. So basically your cortisol and adrenal levels should start to rise, usually between about 6 and 8 in the morning, so 8 being around about the key time when your adrenaline and cortisol should be naturally slightly higher, because that's the real key start of the daytime, and then your cortisol and adrenal levels, adrenaline, stay up. They fluctuate slightly throughout the day, but at the end of the day they are also supposed to lower, and then you get melatonin and other hormones to help you sleep start to kick in and take their place. So for someone who's been in long-term exhaustion, those processes just have not been happening at the right time and in the right balance. So this is why sleep eludes some of those people, because the melatonin just is not kicking in at the right time, and they might be having their melatonin rise in the middle of the day, making them feel even more exhausted. So there's all different sorts of things that can go on during this exhaustion phase, but don't be fooled into thinking the fact that you can still continue with your day and you're still doing your exercise and doing everything else that you're not exhausted. You could still be. So, so listen closely for the rest of the information tonight if you're sort of thinking, oh gee, that could be me. Now, long-term damage can happen to the adrenals. People who have been in that complete exhaustion phase. This is not something where you would just say, okay, I'm going to start looking after myself and in about 2 weeks I'll be able to get on with my normal stressful life. When you're completely exhausted, it takes time to repair. Damage needs to be undone, and it can be done. Absolutely. There's, I never say that, you know, turning your health around can't be done. We've all heard incredible stories from so many people about how they've turned their whole poor health around and become well again. The adrenals is exactly the same. It can be done, but it is something that takes a bit of time. How much time? You're probably thinking, okay, I'm completely exhausted right now. How long before I'm well again? Well, unfortunately, the answer really is how long's a piece of string. If you're going to do absolutely everything right, you're going to have an excellent diet, you're going to rest and you're going to sleep well, and you're going to take into it, you know, to have your supplements and things we'll talk about shortly. If you're going to do everything perfectly, it's going to take less time than if you don't do everything perfectly. And that's about as close an answer as I could give you. But at the minimum, I would say to someone, if you are feeling you're completely exhausted, at least give yourself a good 6-month period of time to really start to see big changes. You'll see incremental changes along the way, but the big changes, give yourself at least 6 months. So what can we do? First of all, let's look at things from a dietary perspective, because we are what we eat, and if we want to have a, you know, a good long-term healthy lifestyle, then we need to always, first of all, look at what we're eating. So a diet high in vitamins, minerals, antioxidants. Now, easier said than done sometimes. For those of you who have been to any of my talks before, you've probably heard me say over and over again, even if you're eating an incredibly good diet, you still might not be getting all the vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, etc. you need. In fact, there is no question about that anymore. The World Health Organization, many other different health authorities have literally spoken out over the last 50 years saying, even if your diet is as absolutely best as you can make it, you still will not be getting everything you need from that food because it's no longer in our soils, etc. So let's just look at sensible guidelines as far as eating. Make sure that the majority of your diet is fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, avocado, eggs, meat if you're not vegetarian, because, and a lot of people say, well, why put all the emphasis into that type of food if you're not getting what you should be out of it anyway? And usually my answer is, well, if you're not eating that type of food, what are you eating? Because the other option really becomes usually more of the junk type food, too much grain food, too much refined foods, etc. So obviously we do need to make sure we're eating mostly raw, fresh foods as much as we can. We'll talk about supplements shortly to work out how we can make up for what we're not getting out of our foods. What else can we do if we're exhausted or in that resistance phase? Well, certainly aiming to get plenty of sleep. Now, how much sleep do we need? Well, it's interesting because a newborn baby needs approximately between about 14 to 16 hours sleep in a 24-hour period. And then as we go through life into old age, the amount of sleep we need gets less and less and less. So someone in their 80s or 90s technically only needs about 4 hours sleep a night. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, well, hang on, that's crazy. What about the nana nap? And, you know, I know older people, they tend to go to bed really early, etc. But that is actually only if the person's health is not incredibly good. So in reality, we actually need less sleep as we get older, and so 4 hours would be plenty for someone of that age if their health was incredibly good. But we're going to generalize and say, well, for most of us listening tonight, we're probably somewhere between our sort of 20s and 60s, and so somewhere between sort of 6 to 10 hours is the average. So we tend to narrow that down and just say 8. Now, some of you will be thinking, well, I know I at least need 9 every night, and others will be saying I do fine on 6 or 7. So as long as you're listening to your body and really kind of taking your guidance from your body, not just ignoring the warning signs. Some of you are saying, I do okay on 6, but in actual fact, you're heading more and more into that exhaustion stage. So let's average it out at about 8 hours a night, preferably unbroken sleep if you can. And as I said before, the immune system repairs itself predominantly between the hours of 10 and midnight. So ideally we should be sleeping by 10 o'clock at night for the best response for our immune system. And again, in theory, they say each hour between 10 and midnight, so those 2 hours are the equivalent of 2 hours each. So basically if you sleep between 10 and 12, it's the equivalent of 4 hours of sleep. Interesting. So now for those of you who are smokers, hopefully no one on this webinar tonight is, but if you are or anyone in your family is, encourage them to quit. Get rid of this habit. If you want healthy adrenals, you cannot be a smoker. The two just cannot go together. Each cigarette contains more than 4,000 chemicals, things like formaldehydes, toluenes, all of the highly toxic chemicals that we've got more than enough evidence to prove each one of those is incredibly dangerous on its own, let alone mixed together in a combination of 4,000 plus. So this is massive stress on the body. And anyone who is not a smoker, I don't know if any of you in your teenage years or at any time throughout your life ever remember having that first cigarette. Most people will say to you that they got head spins, they felt nauseous, they felt sick, etc., etc. And that alone, that story, even if it's never happened to you, but that story alone shows you what a massive stress response that does or that gives to the body. So certainly cortisol, adrenaline, etc. raise during each cigarette. And this is why some people actually take up smoking to lose weight, unfortunately, because the adrenaline and the cortisol does kick in. Initially, it will cause weight loss, but if they continue that long term, then obviously that high level of cortisol and adrenaline basically ends up putting weight around the middle and gives them all of those increased health risks like heart attack, etc. And that's aside from the chemicals going into their body. So don't ever be fooled into thinking that taking up smoking will help you lose weight. It will do the opposite after a period of time. Reduce alcohol intake to no more than 2 glasses daily. Now, I think I'm being quite liberal there. Hopefully, most people aren't drinking daily, but going by standard World Health guidelines, they say no more than 2 glasses. Any more than that, it's too much of a stress on the liver. If you're in the exhaustion phase now or the resistance phase right now, I would be saying try not to have alcohol more than once a week. If you truly want your adrenals to repair. It might feel like it's relaxing you, but in actual fact, it is a stress to the body. Exercising. Now, I've put here at least 4 times a week. I've needed to give some general guidelines, but again, we need to stop and have a look at our own personal situation. If you are doing no exercise whatsoever, unfortunately on a webinar, I'm not going to get you to put your hands up because we can't see you, so you don't have to admit it. But if you're not doing any exercise right now, and you all of a sudden say, right, I'm going to put an hour in, every day and continue that, you're going to feel pretty wiped. And especially if you are exhausted or in the resistance phase now, that's actually going to be too much for you to handle, and that will just become a stress on the body. For those of you who are already quite fit and healthy but feeling, gee, I could be in that exhaustion phase, then yes, you want to keep your exercise up to a certain level, but again, you don't want to push yourself beyond what is actually beneficial. So we have to find that happy medium, and while I do say we should challenge ourselves with our exercise as much as we can, you've got to start somewhere. So if you're not doing any right now, start by having a walk even to the bottom of the driveway, or just around the block at a slow pace or something, just to get you started. If you go okay with that, do a little bit more a couple of days later. If you're going okay with that, add a little bit more. Just listen to your body. But at least 4 times a week should be the minimum, and at least for half an hour at a rate that is getting your heart rate up. Take time to rest and relax. If you're completely exhausted and you're out there exercising and you're eating well and you're doing all of these sort of things, but you're not giving yourself time to rest and relax, then where is the regeneration going to take place? So we need to be in a restful state for muscle tissue to repair, for organ to repair, and of course your adrenals are an organ of the body, and so they take nutrients. If we're asking our adrenals to keep pumping out hormones, cortisol, adrenaline, etc., and repair itself at the same time, it's really not doable. Try and eat in a peaceful environment. This is an interesting one, because a lot of people today, trying to maximize what they can fit into a day, think, oh, well, I'll just catch up with the news at 7 o'clock while I get my dinner ready so that I can sit down and eat and catch up with the news at the same time. But of course, as most of us know, news is pretty much all negative these days. You might get the odd token feel-good story thrown in there once a week or something like that, but generally it is all bad news. And so when you're trying to digest a meal, this should be done in an environment where your body is under the least amount of stress possible, so that complete digestion can take place. If you go back to the beginning of the talk tonight, we said that when you're under stress, your digestive system gets suppressed because it's not important at that time. So if you're eating in a stressful environment, you're eating and your digestive system is being suppressed, there is no way you're going to get maximum benefit out of that meal, maximum nutrition breakdown, absorption, and definitely down the track, you're not going to have elimination happen effectively either. So catching up with the 7 o'clock news whilst having dinner is definitely not a good idea. The same can usually be said for reading newspapers and that sort of thing as well. So try and make that an enjoyable time. If you can't sort of sit with people that are going to be uplifting, sit by yourself, put some music on, etc. I really do want to stress that that is absolutely important, and it's one that tends to be overlooked too easily. And also minimise EMF and chemical exposure. So both electromagnetic frequencies from things like mobile phones, even computers, power lines, etc., and the chemicals that we're exposed to on a daily basis as well. These are a huge stress to the body. So and again, this is something that we have tools, we can do things about it. First of all, from an EMF perspective, the first thing I like to say to people is move the gadgets away from you when you're not using them. We don't need to sit down and read a book with our mobile phone in our pocket, for example. We don't need to charge our mobile phone beside our bed right next to our head while we're sleeping. These sorts of things. We don't need to have the Wi-Fi modem running at night while we're sleeping when no one's using it anyway. Switch these things off and you'll save yourself some money in doing so as well. So there's a lot of ways that we can minimize EMF without having to spend a cent and without having to go to too much effort either. From a chemical perspective, well, with NuWays, we've got the perfect solution in our hands, because just by changing from your everyday products to the NuWays products, you've taken a huge, huge chemical onslaught and chemical stress off your body, which naturally lowers your cortisol and adrenaline. Because any of those chemical exposures does register as a stress and raises those levels in your body. So I want to talk a little bit about some supplements here, because again, we've got an ideal solution right here in our hands, right in front of us. So apart from the general sensible guidelines that we talked about already, with good eating, with getting good sleeping patterns happening, regular rest and relaxation, and I just want to go back for a second I'm going back, previous and previous. when we talk about rest and relaxation, I just want to give you guys just one simple tip. This is something that I found beneficial throughout my lifetime, because I used to work way too many hours, was under a lot of stress, and raising kids at the same time, competing in sports, so training hours and hours every day, etc. One thing I learned to do was to literally just stop everything, walk outside, preferably put my bare feet on the ground, and literally do absolutely nothing. Some people say, well, did you meditate? Did you pray? Did you read? Did you all this sort of... Nope, I will literally just recommend sitting outside and doing nothing. Now, for some of you, that's going to be a challenge at first, because you're going to start saying, well, all of a sudden I'm starting to think, gee, I could be inside getting this done, and I've got this on my list, and blah, blah, blah. But in all honesty, if you give yourself 10 minutes to literally stop and totally relax and totally rest, and if things pop into your mind, just say, yep, I acknowledge that, I'll think about that later, go back to completely relaxing. You will be far more effective when you get back on with what you're about to do next. So that's still something that I try and aim to do now every single day, is just find a 10-minute period of time, doesn't matter when, doesn't matter if it's morning, night, whatever, just take 10 minutes to literally stop and do absolutely nothing. And for some people that can be a lifesaver, and it can make the difference between whether you fall from the resistance stage into that complete exhaustion stage or not. 10 minutes can be very, very powerful. During that 10 minutes, your cortisol and your adrenaline drop down incredibly low. So that alone, I just wanted to come back and sort of reiterate how important just a simple practice like that can be. Let's look at some supplements. We talked earlier about eating good foods, make sure that we get all of our fruits, vegetables, etc. And so obviously we need to do that to try and maximize our food nutrition intake from the original place we're supposed to be getting it, which was food. But these days, because we aren't getting all of the adequate vitamins and minerals, then we do need to try and make up for that difference with some supplements. Now, what I'm going to say before we start talking about a few of these individual products here is I always say to people, whenever someone says to me, I've got a friend and she's got this challenge and what should she take for supplements, my first answer is, well, first of all of the basics, and then I'll talk to you about the others. Now, to me, the basics means either Ferroxin or Maximal, so your liquid minerals. That's always, to me, first starting point, one of those products. The second product is always one of the Oracle or Oracle Plus products, so that you're getting all of your B vitamins, minerals, etc. The third key basic product that I always talk about are one of the Revenols, one or both, whichever is your choice. So that's either the Revenol or Cascading Revenol. So you've got your minerals, you've got your vitamins, and you've got your antioxidants covered in those basics. And the fourth basic that I term it is basically the Lactoflora. So Lactoflora to get the gut with the right balance of gut flora, the immune system being picked up by the right balance of the gut flora, etc. So the four basics, I'm going to assume that we're all utilising those right now. And after we've done that, or because we're doing that, we can look at these extra things now specifically related to adrenal exhaustion, resistance phase, or even if you're just in the alarm phase now. So let's have a look at these and we'll put them into their right category. First of all, Emperor's Formula. This is 100% my favorite product. It is also, I think, sadly, a product that most people don't understand effectively, and so most people who could be using it and could be benefiting it aren't using it because they didn't really know what it was about. Emperor's Formula is the adrenal best friend. So if you're in the alarm, the resistance, or the exhaustion phase, this is the product for you. Also for teenagers who are competing in sports or they're under pressure for exams, etc., a lot of stress going on around school, students, university students, etc., people in college and whatnot. Again, there's a lot of stress that goes along with exams, study time and so forth. Emperor's Formula is an ideal product for them. Anyone who is competing at a high level of sports or even a moderate level of sports, if you want to maintain your immune system and if you want to maintain the level of competition that you're competing at, you have got to keep your adrenals in tip-top shape, because there's no point trying to be a top athlete if you're exhausted at the same time. It just cannot happen. So you can see it's quite a wide variety of people who would ideally benefit from using Emperor's Formula. The last one I'm going to throw in there as well is menopausal women. I find a lot of people going through menopause and they say, look, I've tried this and that and this and that and the other and it hasn't helped me. But when I suggest to them to use Emperor's Formula and a product that NuWays has called Endow Harmonizing Cream, the two of those together sometimes can work magic for menopause, simply because a lot of women who are going through menopause, it's all exacerbated by the fact that they're actually stressed, adrenally burnt out and exhausted at the same time. So Emperor's Formula is a combination of some different herbs. This formula dates back many thousands of years, and interestingly it was given to menopausal women 2,000 odd years ago for what they called hysteria back then. So anyone going through menopause was called hysterical. And Emperor's Formula, which is this combination of herbs, was the treatment of choice because it worked. It helped bring them back into balance once again. But yeah, anytime you think of adrenals, think Emperor's Formula. How much can you take? Well, the bottle says take 4 tablets twice a day, and they're just very small tablets, so very easy to take. If you're going through the alarm stage, then that to me would be the ideal dose. If you're into the resistance stage, you can still use that dose as long as you're going to implement some of these other changes we've talked about and maybe some of these other products we're talking about as well. But if you're in that complete exhaustion stage, personally, and I'm generalizing here, I'm not prescribing this to you right now, but personally I have had different people who have doubled and even tripled that dose to get some good results. Like I say, you know, get some guidance around that, of course. But this is a product that is so safe and effective. It will pick your adrenals up, but it does not give you that typical coffee hit, if you know what I mean, that caffeine hit, because that would be doing the exact opposite of what we're aiming for. So now the next product here, Extramen Feel Calm. This is brilliant, but I am going to say first of all, because Extramen does contain St. John's wort, it is not suitable to mix for people who are on chemical antidepressants, so antidepressants that have been prescribed by the doctor. If you can work with your doctor and come off antidepressants and switch to Extramen instead, then it can give you some extremely good, sometimes as good if not better results, but just make sure you're not taking the two of them together. They just don't match. But Extramen is brilliant for stress. It is also brilliant for depression. They're the two key things that we think of Extramen for. Emperor's and Extramen can be taken together. A lot of people do. Sometimes people say, well, I tend to take Emperor's in the morning and at lunchtime, and I take my Extramen at night because it helps me with sleeping. Both products can be taken morning or night. It's completely personal choice, but that's the formula that I tend to find works best for most people. Emperor's morning and lunch, Extramen in the evening. Now, Genicity, this is it's been one of my favorites for a long time. There's, I guess, two things about the Genicity. First of all, it definitely feels like it gives you a bit of a pick-me-up. And when I was dieting and training athletes for bodybuilding competitions some years ago, Genicity was a product I had every single athlete taking. And if they started to say, or if their training started to drop, if they were starting to look a bit tired, exhausted, because obviously we were starting to cut calories as well, then I would just simply increase their Genicity, and that would help them get through. So it's absolutely brilliant for maintaining stamina, but it also does give you a pick-me-up. So it's not like having a coffee or one of these horrendous V drinks or Red Bulls or these sorts of things that I do not recommend at all. It doesn't give you that kind of instant adrenaline hit. It gives you a sustained pick-me-up. So it's more like, if you can imagine, a bit of a bell curve where your energy raises slowly and then gradually drops slowly. So you can see why this would be the ideal product to utilize again morning and lunchtime to help give you that gentle pick pick-me-up and that stamina throughout the day, but not really a product for most people to be taking in the evening. For some people, that would probably keep you up and awake. So, but a very, very effective product, and it's also, the ingredients in there are very nourishing for the adrenals. So while it does give you a pick-me-up, don't think that it's actually burning out the adrenals as well. It's absolutely not. Durian Fusion, this is an interesting product because it does so many things. For the topic of stress and exhaustion and adrenal deficiency that we're looking at tonight, durian would be ideal to take particularly in the evening, but it can be used in the morning as well. The reason I say evening is because durian is naturally high in tryptophan. So tryptophan is a naturally occurring amino acid that is conducive to helping us sleep better. It helps to encourage melatonin release, and it's also relaxing to the nervous system as well. So this can even be given to young children who are having trouble sleeping because of those natural tryptophan levels. But for people who are feeling, well, I'm really stressed at work, you know, and I've got this high level of adrenaline and cortisol going on during the day as well, you certainly can have a dose of durian in the morning as well. The other thing I like about it is, for durian, is that it is very, very good for balancing liver enzymes. And as we've talked about a few times tonight, during high levels of stress, your digestive system is suppressed, so is the liver, and so your enzymes can start to get out of balance because of the stress. So durian can help to rebalance those crucially important liver enzymes. There's so many other things I could talk about that product as well, but for the purpose of our talk tonight, the liver enzyme balance and the tryptophan are the two key points there. Oracle, we mentioned before, this is one of the things that I call a basic. The reason I do is because it's got those B vitamins in there, which every single person needs, and stress is something that will literally chew through your B vitamins. So most people are not getting enough B vitamins in their diet because the highest source of B vitamins from food actually comes from grains. Now, a lot of people are avoiding grain foods today because they are concerned about putting on weight. They're concerned about the natural sugar or carb content. They've got allergies or reactions to certain grains, so they might be trying to avoid them. There's a lot of different reasons people off grain foods these days. And even if you are still eating grains, if it's in the form of breads and pastas and these processed foods, the B vitamins are very much stripped out of those foods in that processing anyway. So sadly, when we look at the general population and the general foods, even of people eating well, the B vitamins are sadly lacking. And if we don't have enough B vitamins, our nervous system cannot repair itself effectively. Our adrenals cannot repair. The adrenals particularly use vitamins B5 and B6 in particular. And also we can start to have things like depression, poor memory, etc., that can be linked with lack of B vitamins as well. So while I mentioned Oracle as one of the basics, I wanted to put this in here again as a double reminder of just how important it is specifically for the adrenals. Now, Chelamin is definitely an ideal product for adrenal exhaustion because of the magnesium and to a lesser degree the calcium that is in that product. Again, just like B vitamins, when you're exhausted or when you're under a lot of stress, your body uses a lot of magnesium. So even double dosing the Chelamin at times of extreme stress and extreme exhaustion is not a problem at all. Whenever I mention double dosing, etc., it's definitely important to get some advice about that from different health practitioners like Renee or myself, etc. But our products are very, very safe and can be used in these higher doses for periods of time when necessary. Now, Renew. Renew is an interesting one, and this is one that I do tend to recommend to people a lot, certainly from a sporting perspective, because when you're exercising, that is a stress to the body. So when especially if you're doing weight training or sprinting or anything high intensity, there's a lot of repair needs to take place afterwards, and that is a stress in and of itself, let alone the stress of exertion when you're actually doing the exercise at that point. Now, the key benefit that Renew brings is that the branched chain amino acids contained in this formula are the key things that the body needs, particularly the muscles, the heart, and the organs. It's the key ingredients that the body needs to repair the damage that is done to muscles, etc., during the intense exercise. So the same when we've got high levels of stress from cortisol, adrenaline going on. Basically, we need to start repairing the damage that's done, because in some ways, with the increased heart rate, increased blood pressure, the similar sort of damage can be taking place. So normally we focus on this as being repair for athletes, but for people who've been under any sort of high stress situations, especially things like surgeries or chronic illness where you're needing to recover and repair tissue damage, Renew is definitely a key product in that instance. Atramax I want to mention briefly because, as we talked about earlier, when there's a high level of stress going on and there's the cortisol, the adrenaline, that can also increase your risk of stroke, heart attack, heart disease in many different forms. And Atramax, as many of you might know, has got those excellent ingredients like CoQ10 and hawthorn, etc. in there, which are not only nourishing to the heart as an organ, it helps to keep it in balance and it helps to keep the energy processes in the cells of the heart muscle working effectively, but it's crucially important to make sure that our heart, which is one of our key major organs in our body, is functioning to maximum capacity. And some people, when they are under high levels of stress, will start to get rapid heart rate, or they will get a heart rate where it seems to stop for a second and then it has quite a few fast beats and then it seems to stop again. You've got this irregular pattern going on. Those can be looked at as signs sometimes of at least being in that resistance heading towards the exhaustion phase. So if you have got any sort of heart palpitations or rapid heart rate, etc., it can be worth seeing a health practitioner of your choice for that, but it can also be worth utilising some Atramax to help bring back some balance as well. Now, krill EFA, a few reasons I've put this one in here. Again, most people are very lacking in omega-3, just like we are in the B vitamins. Most people are not getting enough omega-3 from their diet because unless you're eating incredibly high levels of fish, which most people don't simply because expense, availability, and also concerns with toxicity from the water, etc. So unless you're eating high levels of those foods, we are simply not getting enough of the omega-3s. Some people turn to things like flaxseed oil, but again, if you're deficient in B12, folic acid, for example, if you're deficient in certain other nutrients, then the flaxseed cannot change, it can't do its key processes to be then being able to be utilized as omega-3. So flaxseed oil, whilst it can be okay, it's not as ideal, and certainly for someone who's adrenally exhausted, I would put them straight, direct them straight to krill rather than any other source of omega-3. It's up to 300% more effective in its anti-inflammatory effects than even salmon oil was, and salmon oil was a good product. But also, yeah, the key point here I want to, I guess, bring forward with krill is when someone is under a high level of stress, the inflammation levels are usually very high as well. And being that krill is one of our best anti-inflammatory products available, that can help keep that in check. So again, we're talking about the heart here as well. So Atramax and krill can be a perfect partner pair for looking after the heart. And lastly, I want to mention Ming Gold. Now, again, for athletes, as I was, training and working with people, Ming Gold was something that I basically insisted that everyone uses, not only to maintain their immune system, but to maintain their stamina as well. Most high-level athletes will go through a phase of every 6 weeks. They will either get sick or they will just not be able to perform as good as they normally can, and it tends to go through this cyclical phase. So Ming Gold seems to be a key product that helps to keep them being able to maintain that stamina and keep their immune system up so they're not having this cyclical sickness phase happening. So I know not everyone out there is an athlete, of course, but the reason I kind of bring the two, this into the equation here is because the stress that most people are under on a day-to-day basis, just from things like work and family and other commitments, can literally be the equivalent of high-level athletic performance or competing or training. That's how much stress it can actually impact on the system. So Ming Gold, whether your stress is coming from a high level of performance or whether it's coming from stress from the workplace, etc., can literally keep you functioning at a high level for a much longer period of time. So they're the key favourites that I wanted to talk about tonight, because they are all particular to adrenals. Definitely Emperor's Formula is my key favourite there, but you can certainly see where the other ones have their place. Do you need to take all of them? Well, it comes down to your own personal situation. Look at where you're at, look at what stage of the alarm, the resistance or the exhaustion, look at what stage you're at, and just hopefully you took some notes about each of those products and you can work out which ones are most suitable for yourself, and obviously the basics that we mentioned at the beginning. Lastly, from a product perspective, I just want to mention aromatherapy, because this is something very much underutilized and is also very powerful. I know so many people say, I'm brilliant at taking my supplements, I've got a great diet, etc. And you say, do you utilize aromatherapy at all? And they say, no, I don't really know what to do with it. And I think this is where a lot of people are not using it, because they don't feel that they really understand it effectively. So what I want to point out here is the blends. So what NeuWays has done is they've made a formula called De-Stress or Sleep Well. And so for the perspective of someone who is under a lot of stress or suffering from insomnia or trying to get their sleep patterns back under control again, these two products literally have been made for you exactly. So you don't need to understand it at all, you just need to use them. How do you use them? Well, literally just put it in an oil burner. Some people put a couple of drops of Sleep Well on their pillowcase or their pajamas, for example. Some people like to just dilute it and rub it into the skin before they go to sleep, sort of massage it into their feet, etc. I've heard so many different stories from people. Even one lady, she stood up during a seminar and she said, I had really high blood pressure, and she said the only thing I did was I got a bottle of this De-Stress that was recommended to her, and she said, and I started wearing it like a perfume. So she said, I just put a little bit on each day, and she said, and my blood pressure actually started to come down. She said, do you think it could be anything to do with utilizing this product De-Stress? And I said, absolutely, because as we talked about earlier, the adrenaline and the cortisol that are up from the stress response can actually be lowered with a product like this aromatherapy blend. So even if you feel like you know nothing about aromatherapy, don't worry, the hard work's all been done. Just grab a bottle of De-Stress and preferably a bottle of Sleep Well, and use the De-Stress in the morning and the Sleep Well in the evening, and you've got the benefits of both worlds. So hopefully that's given some information that's useful to everyone tonight. I'm going to hand back to Renee shortly. So I've just got a picture up there of some of the books that I've got available. Anyone is welcome to go on the website and have a look at those and see if they're relevant to you. But yes, I'll pass back to you, Renee, and we'll go from there.
Thank you so much for that, Hayley. Very much appreciated, and obviously very active in the writing area and the touring area, so you're doing a great service to one and all out there, particularly in your regional area of Queensland. But a very comprehensive presentation on stress, and really interesting to hear how stress can impact on our lives in so many different and varied ways. And what's most important, I think, the practical solutions that you provided in terms of diet and lifestyle, and the relevant NeuWays supplements, and your favourites there very much coordinate with my favourites and my wife Vivian's favourites about managing stress and exhaustion and anxiety issues. So a very practical presentation. I thank you so much for those insights, and when you're touring down in Melbourne, let us know, and certainly we may have some team up there in Queensland who I'm sure drop in and by courtesy of the GHS system as well, and the various connections that we have through NeuWays, and to be able to hear about this great and valuable information. So thanks so much again, Hayley. We really appreciate your contribution to tonight's webinar.
Pleasure. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, so just finishing off now, just to let you know that we have a webinar coming up next week, and I'll just bring that slide up now. Here we go. And so what's very popular is about the weight loss program and the Fit Choice program, and we have many requests for people to hear more and more about the program. And what we love about the program, that anyone can do this, particularly a phase 1, because it's such a comprehensive detoxification program to detox from toxins and also stress, if we tie it into tonight's presentation as well. And certainly people can carry on into phase 2 and 3 to experience some more significant weight loss benefits. And this program is not just about weight loss, it's about an overall health and wellness program, because we see that by managing your health and well-being, so many other areas of one's health improve, whether it is the stress and anxiety, or whether it is the IBS, whether it is the blood pressure, fatigue issues, chronic fatigue, fibromyalgia type conditions as well. We just see so many wonderful benefits when people undergo a program like this. So this is our webinar for next Tuesday, the 18th of August at 8:30 p.m, same time next week. A link you will receive during the course of the week. So I encourage you to tune in, but particularly because we're into social retail, it's about connecting with other people that you know who have health challenges, that you may be able to be an agent of change and positively impact someone's life in this regard as well. So when you receive the link, you're certainly encouraged to share it with others. So I hope to see you all on the webinar next week. Again, thank you to Hayley Wallace, naturopath from the Gold Coast, for her contribution to tonight's webinar, and we look forward to see you all next week. We'd love your feedback in the chat box, so you're more than welcome to put your comments there, and I bid you all a very good evening. So it's good night from Hayley and good night from Renee Roth. Good night, everyone.